So we've just finished a week of group practice during this winter retreat, and moving into less organized schedule. And in another week, a number of us going into even more solitary retreat for several weeks. And we've been continuing on the theme for the readings of the fourth Satipatthana, pretty much just having wrapped up the section on the five khandhas and about to launch into the sense bases, readings on the sense bases, that part of the fourth Satipatthana. I've been recalling a story that I've heard about Luang Por Chah at Wat Pah Pong when he was going to send one of the monks away for a period of time to another monastery to continue his practice there. And the monk was reluctant to leave Wat Pah Pong and to leave Luang Por Chah for that time because he felt like Luang Por Chah was his teacher and he needed to be around his teacher, and wasn't so sure about the place he was going to, what he would find there, if there would be enough supports. The teaching maybe not be so much what he was used to. And Luang Por Chah's response was, you don't look at it that way. You're going to be going to a place and you will have teachers there. In fact, you'll have 6 teachers. You'll have your eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind as your teachers, the 6 sense bases. And they're with you wherever you go. So you're never without a teacher. So I always enjoyed that, reflecting on that this is one of the prime reflections or ways of looking at our experience that we can learn so much from about suffering and the end of suffering. The 5 khandhas and the 6 sense bases are essentially 2 slightly different angles, but looking at the same experience, the experience of experience. The 5 khandhas are sort of one way of grouping all the different aspects of our experience of body and mind, form, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness is constituting what it is that we call who we are. And then the 6 sense bases of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, mind, and the intellect, body and mind, the intellect, kind of being a different grouping, but of a similar nature. The 5 physical sense bases being the body, essentially, part of the body, or the experience, how we experience the sense realm through the body, and then the mind as well, the intellect and its ideas, its concepts. So just a slightly different angle of looking at experience, grouping of our experience. There's the teaching from the Buddha, the reflection from the Buddha that is a favorite of mine about beings. This samsara is without a discernible beginning. For a long time, beings have been wandering and roaming through this samsara, obstructed by ignorance and fettered by craving. And the 5 khandhas contemplation, the 6 sense bases contemplation are, of course, both oriented towards undoing our ignorance and becoming unfettered from our craving. I tend to think of them having slightly different emphases, although both of them, of course, both of those contemplations, the 5 aggregates and the 6 sense bases, address both ignorance and craving. I tend to think of the 5 khandhas contemplation aiming more towards the ignorance aspect of it, and the 6 sense-based contemplations aiming a bit more, leaning more in the direction of looking at the craving aspect of our obstructions. Because the 6 sense bases are, of course, the place where feeling arises, the feelings of pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral arise from that contact in the 6 sense bases that come together with the 6 sense bases. And this feeling is what serves as the basis, of course, for the arising of craving that then progresses into clinging, becoming, birth, and suffering. So I see the contemplation of the 6 sense bases as this opportunity to really start to understand the process of craving and how to let that unwind, let that unbind, let the fetters fall away. The word fetter is a very strong one, that kind of bonding or holding together, obstructing, limiting one, like a ball and chain, fettered. So we can see how we live our lives oftentimes just following this craving being in charge of our lives. It holds us in its grip. It's hard to free ourselves from this grip of desire and craving, and it just takes over. It leads us around. It demands that we gratify it. And we expect so much from our body and mind based on this craving. We have so many expectations. We place so many demands on this body to give us a sense of pleasure, to gratify this craving. And it's fairly relentless. So our task is to see if we can unglue ourselves from these habitual patterns. In the teachings that we'll probably start hearing more about from the readings, one of the standard paradigms for analyzing our experience through the 6 sense bases is one that's also seen in the 5 khandhas. We've talked about this grouping of looking at our experience through the lens of gratification, danger, and escape. And this is oftentimes how it's described, particularly in relation to the 6 sense bases as well, maybe even a little more so, particularly when you look through the Salayatana Wagga, the Salayatana Samyutta, the collection of teachings around the 6 sense bases. Many different angles that it comes from, or comes through, but often referring back to that gratification, danger, and escape. And so that's a good way to start the exploration. And to realize that the Buddha never denied that there was a certain amount of real gratification that comes when we try and satisfy the desire, the craving that arises at any of the sense bases. and to acknowledge that there is that gratification. There wouldn't be the hook, wouldn't be there if there weren't that sense of pleasant experience that comes from following sensory experience. But to look and see what the limitations of that are. This is looking at the danger. And we can just see that as it arises in any one of these moments of sensory experience. That the danger is in the transiency of it, the fact that yes, and get my hit of enjoyment from whatever it is in the sensory world, and then it soon dissipates. The gratification happens, the event is over, but the desire has just gone dormant for a short while until it arises again, and we have to find some other avenue within the sense realm to get the same hit. And oftentimes, having to kind of up the ante a little bit. There's, particularly if it's a same sense base that we're operating in, then it seems like, many times the more we engage or indulge, then the next time that comes up, we have to kind of go a little bit further, because the same amount of pleasurable experience, doesn't quite satisfy in the same way that the first time around did. So kind of having to keep refreshing, renewing, increasing the stimulation to get the same pleasure. So there's a bit of what they call developing tolerance. And that's actually just part of natural biology in many cases, but really plays out in this whole realm of craving. So we're really hooked into it, addicted in some ways. So the transient nature is what we call the danger. I remember before I became a monk, when I was just starting in some ways to develop a bit more familiarity with this tradition, but already been practicing for a while. And Ajahn was coming to the West Coast. This was well before the monastery here was opening up, and a few years before I was seriously considering ordination. But anyway, I was his attendant in San Francisco for a period of 6 weeks or so during one of his several-month stays, and we had rented a place in the city itself, a large apartment building, or a large apartment with several bedrooms, and I was his attendant there for about 6 weeks, and it was a wonderful opportunity, of course, and I had many good interactions, but there was one very memorable interaction, at least for me. I don't know if Ajahn would remember it, but we were just sitting talking about Dhamma and life, sitting in the living room on Duncan Street. And I remember we started talking about, the various aspects of living in the world, myself being an avid householder and involved in all the various things of living a human life, and talking about this very issue of transiency of experience, particularly sensory experience, and the gratification, and then the danger, the fact that it all changes, it's unstable, and that even the best possible circumstances that one can find oneself in will inevitably change. And I remember saying to him, I said, well, to me, if you go into some sort of experience, I think we're particularly talking about the realm of personal relationships, close relationships. I say if you go into them knowing that it is going to change and it's going to pass, and you do that with open eyes, then I can see how it's worth it. You have your enjoyment. You get what you can from a relationship, but you know that it's going to pass. So as long as you're honest about it and go into honestly, makes sense to me that one should just get the benefits from it, even though you know that there's going to be a downside. And I remember his response at that time was, I was looking at him and his face was just completely blank. And his mouth didn't quiver, his eyebrows didn't rise up, his forehead didn't wrinkle, anything like that. But his eyes widened just a little bit, just enough that I noticed. And I didn't say anything. And then I saw him. His eyes blinked, kind of one of these Ajahn Amaro slow blinks, and then opened up again, just slightly wider than normal. He didn't say a word. And I knew exactly what he was thinking. He was thinking, this guy is deluded. And it was at that moment, I think I just changed the subject. Like I didn't want to go any further here. Let's talk about the weather or something like that, and just left it at that. And in retrospect, I think that was kind of like the first real crack in my resolve to remain out of the monastic life. I always had these kind of leanings and tendencies and appreciations for the monastic community, but had always been trying to find my way to justify why it wasn't going to happen for me, and for some reason that moment was sort of like an eye-opening moment. It's sort of like, just not willing to look at what he was saying in terms of the transiency of everything within the conditioned world. And my not being willing to kind of open up to that truth. So really, even though I wasn't acknowledging it out in the open, that was kind of a very important understanding or insight, I guess you could call it, that, okay, there is a downside to this, and maybe it's something I should pay a little bit more attention to. So you have the gratification, you have the danger in the realm of the senses, and then the escape. What is the escape? Nissarana, the escape from this, the dangers of buying into the craving, dangers of just blindly following craving. What is the escape from that? And as the teachings tell us, the escape is in sense restraint, and basically not attending to the signs and features of the sensory world that provoke craving, that are provocative of craving. And craving in both of its aspects, both the craving for something pleasurable and the craving to get away from something that's very unpleasant. So not attending unwisely to those signs and features that bring that up, but learning how to look at sensory experience from a more neutral viewpoint. So there's lots of different ways that we do that, and a lot of this is, of course, in our daily life. We see how it is that we look at the world through that lens of craving and desire, and learn to back away from that. Sense restraint comes in a lot of different forms. Sometimes it's really important to actually just remove oneself from a particular area of experience, a realm or moment of experience. If it's a really intense experience that's bringing on craving. And one of the appropriate responses in some cases is to just remove oneself from that environment. So we have, instructions from the Buddha on, like in the Sabbasava Sutta, how to abandon the asavas, the taints, particularly of sensuality in this case, through avoiding. You don't go to places that will put one in danger of provoking the sense desire. So we don't go to as monks anyway. We don't go to bars, and we don't go to taverns, and we don't go to places where there's a lot of sense stimulation. We don't go to a lot of parties, things like that, where it would just be too stimulating. That would be considered wrong resort. So that's a form of sense restraint. And we conduct our lives here in the monastery based around simplicity, renunciation, and all the people that come and stay with us do the same. So we're just looking to cool down the whole sensory environment, because we need that kind of support from the world around us that we engage in, the places we go, the people we choose to be with. We need that kind of external support because the sense realm is very, very strong and alluring. But we can't shut ourselves off from the world of experience completely either. So we're not attempting to completely deprive our experience from any kind of sensory stimulation. There will be times when attractive people come through, where the food is well prepared and beautifully presented, when all the sights, sounds, tastes, odors, sensations are pleasurable. And we have to know how to handle that when they do come to us. And they will. So it's being careful to learn how to, again, as it's stated, not attend to the particular signs and features. Because desire sees what it wants to see. We have to selectively attend to certain aspects of experience for desire to get what it wants. And we have to not buy into that habit. And we have to keep reminding ourselves to look at any particular sense object or to experience any particular sense object with clarity and in its completeness. And this is, of course, why we have the Asubha practices and here there's going to be, for people who are staying up tonight, there's going to be an autopsy video just to sort of help break the illusion of what we usually experience this body as, take a deeper look into the interior, just as a way of counteracting that kind of haze that we like to look at things through. It's kind of like looking through rose-colored glasses. We like to have a certain taint in how we view experience of the senses. There's a lovely verses from the Therigatha that is a great example of that, where Suba, the nun, she's an enlightened bhikkhuni, is being harassed by a layman to come and romp with her in the woods, and submit to sensual desires, and he's trying to woo her, and she's of course, as an arahant, she's not buying it, and she's just basically scolding him and saying, you're crazy, you're out of your mind, why would you want to even think about trying to pursue this kind of relationship with an arahant bhikkhuni, or she wouldn't refer to herself as an arahant, but as a daughter of the Buddha, and he can't be swayed, and he's just so enwrapped by her, and he's just in this kind of haze, this kind of sensual haze that has overcome him, which kind of reminds me sometimes of like when we see in rutting season the bucks and the doe. The does going through their mating routine or their romance, and that I saw this once close up when near my walking path one afternoon. That a buck is usually quite alert and open and clear-eyed and very sensitive to human presence and bounds away, and that it was during rutting season and he was trying to woo this doe, and just sort of slowly following her around, and his head was kind of bowed down, and his lids were sort of half open, and he just was moving very slowly and just following her very slowly, and he was just like completely entranced and didn't even know I was there. He was just so overcome with lust, and it was just so striking, what sensual desire can do. But anyway, a little bit of an aside that from the Suba the nun story, that she finally says, "What is it that you find so attractive about me?" And he says, "Well, it's your eyes. It's your the most beautiful thing that can exist. They look like deer's eyes. They're so beautiful." And she goes, "Well, how can you be so attracted to this, ball of wax set in a socket with secretions?" And he just can't be swayed. So basically, she just looks at him, and she reaches in, grabs a hold of her eyeball, pulls it out, and hands it to him, and says, "Here, you like it so much, it's yours. Take it." And of course, his desire dissolves right there on the spot, and he grants her wish to leave her alone, and departs. But it's that kind of blind craving that we're looking to not be fooled by anymore. So taking a close look at the temporary nature of gratification, and not attending to signs and features, but looking at the world of sensory experience more honestly, looking at the human body just as it is, not as a disgusting kind of a thing, although it can be sometimes if you're really looking deep inside it, but trying to keep a well-rounded grasp on it, or the food line when we go through and looking at the things that we really like the most and spending time, should I take more of that? Maybe I should take just one more, and getting to the end of the line and the desserts and however it is that we react to them. How do we attend to that? Are we spending a lot of time considering how many more to take and how much pleasure we should be getting out of it? Or do we just move through a little more quickly and take what we need and move on. There was a time I remember also, just the strength of somehow these food desires can be for us as monastics. But remembering one humorous moment when early on in my monk's life, when there was a meal invitation in a Thai restaurant in the city, and a number of us were down there, and Ajahn Suchito happened to be visiting us and was part of the meal invitation, and it was just a full-on offering, dish after dish coming on, and they just kept on coming. It seemed like it was an endless supply of this really well-prepared Thai food. And we were all getting, of course, quite well fed. And every time you thought that was the end, then something else would come up. It wasn't all presented at the same time, so you weren't quite sure how much to take or not to take. And we finally got through, and, just speaking for myself, I was completely stuffed. And then dessert comes, of course, and so you're taking a little bit of this and a little bit of that from the dessert tray, and because of course the donors, the owners of the restaurant, were standing by, making sure that you were, taking everything that taking some of everything that they offered. And so finally, the end of the dessert happens, and the fruit, of course, at the end, and just kind of reeling from having had too much. And just when we thought it was over, the cheesecake comes out, and everybody's given us a piece of cheesecake, and I was thinking to myself, wow, I don't know if I can do this. And then I looked over at Ajahn Suchito, and he was kind of looking at it, and he said, kind of quietly, but loud enough for me to hear anyway, maybe some others, he said, "There is no known defense against cheesecake." And we both, and everybody else, I think, who was there, kind of just, okay, one more round. So, the allure of food is very strong, and sometimes it feels like we are defenseless. But we learn from those things too. So, sense restraint, not attending to signs and features. This is our escape from being completely controlled by sense desire. And it's a lifetime practice for many of us, I think. So the practice, particularly around sense restraint and monitoring the experiences that we have through the sixth sense basis, the contemplation of the six senses, is largely, in my mind, something that we do off the cushion. On the cushion, we're developing our meditation practice and our skills and looking for alternatives to the pleasures that come from the senses, something that's a little more sublime and skillful, and develops clarities for being able to see things, slow down the habitual reactions, so that when we are confronted with the experience of the sense bases, and they're coming at us full on in our daily activities, so that we have a little bit more clarity from our time on the cushion, but really where the rubber hits the road is in the day-to-day activities, and learning how to have enough clarity to be able to catch the stimulation that's coming in through our senses, so that we don't let it get too far, and the practice is just catching it sooner and sooner. Through mindfulness and clear comprehension, staying grounded in the body, being alert to how the mind gets moved through the sensory experience, and learning to not engage in inappropriate attention and to engage in appropriate attention as soon as we see a wavering coming up through some realm of the senses. But it's this. This is where the work is really done in this realm. It's just staying in the moment with that guarded senses. Again, not closed off to the realm of sensory experience, but very attentive and alert to being caught and being moved into that kind of hazy confusion where desire grabs hold and leads us around. It's like a prisoner. We're a prisoner. We're a slave to this craving. And asking ourselves, do we really want to keep doing this? How much longer do we want to be controlled by senseless craving? When will we have had enough? Because it's insatiable. It's just that there's never any long-term gratification. So we, get hit over the head time and again. We fall for it over and over, and we have to have the stamina and the persistence to keep picking ourselves up and saying, okay, lost that one, but maybe I'll be a little more ready for the next one. And it takes a lot of commitment and bravery to keep this up and not to just sink into falling for it, succumbing to it. So we muster all the resources that we can. We hang around the right people. We don't go to the wrong places. We do whatever we can to support being able to see past this. It's also so important to realize at least to some extent, some of the fruits of the practice, some of the peace of mind that comes, over a period of time as we start to get little victories here and there, and as our meditation practice stabilizes and becomes more secure, and we start to actually really experience some of the more sublime, pleasurable experiences through meditation. The settling of the mind, the peacefulness of samadhi, the peacefulness of a collected mind, of a composed mind that isn't darting around. The benefits of living in a community of like-minded people who are all following precepts. What a blessing that is. And the sense of security and safety, trust that one can develop when one is practicing and living with people who are committed to those same kinds of precepts. Just reflecting on that and seeing the uplift in the mind that comes. Boy, we have it really good, a lot better than most of the world. People who have to live in fear and distrust. We don't have to do that here. The uplift of mind that comes from helping, generosity, the work we do, what we contribute to the life here at the monastery, or in the world if we're out in the world, the goodness that comes from right livelihood. Reflecting on that. And seeing the effects that it has over time. I remember often in my days before taking ordination, just getting exposed to the monastic community, Ajahn Amaro, Ajahn Pasano, Ajahn Sumedho, and looking at these people and saying, gosh, these people are really happy. It's not the same kind of happiness that you see out in the world. These people seem to be really content. I want that. I want that too. I want to bring that into the world. So reflecting on that, reflecting on the goodness that comes from this way of life, and this pursuit, this trying to damp down the effects of the world, the stimulations of the world, what it does to us inside, and the cooling and the peace and the genuine, deep sense of contentment and happiness that can come with this kind of restraint of the senses and development of sublime forms of happiness, of contentment, through letting go, through release, relinquishment. So it's not all drudgery, it's not all difficulty, it's not all resistance to the temptations of the world. That's, there is some of that, of course, through the sense restraint and renunciation. And then there's the benefits that come from that, as well as the uplifting nature of seeing clearly, removing the veil, and seeing the goodness in the world that arises from this way of life. So just looking forward to the next few sessions this coming week of moving into another set of contemplations that will move us into the realm of the sense spaces, the six sense spaces, another way of looking at our experience, and seeing how we can free ourselves from suffering and develop the long-term sense of gratification and well-being that comes from not being fooled by the sense realm. So I think I'll leave it just for reflection this evening.